Due to inefficient and unsustainable logging practices such as clear cutting and slash and burn, our forests and the habitats that dwell and depend upon the forests are being eradicated. Our country's logging practices must be restricted to more sustainable and controllable environments in order to sustain the natural beauty left in the world and to provide a place for those devastated habitats to flourish. The current logging practices today are extremely wasteful and cannot be maintained indefinitely. The methods for selecting sections of the forest to be cut down are very crude. Many logging companies simply mark a section, bring in their heavy logging equipment, and just cut the forest down. They do not use discretion in selecting that area because they simply plan on cutting down a larger area around it. Negative effects of cutting down the trees around in that habitat would be the release of CO2 in the local atmosphere, and which would deteriorate the atmosphere for all the animals in that habitat, and also the exhaust and the upheaval of the soil caused by the heavy machinery, which would depreciate the soil, which doesn't allow the new growth of trees to occur. It also weakens the ground to factors such as floods and erosion, because the roots of the trees aren't there, so the water just takes the soil because there's nothing to anchor it down to the ground. Some companies have a selection process to eliminate young growth from the portion marked to be cut down. However, this process still affects the new growth by eliminating local cover, which would protect the saplings from anything that could hinder their growth, such as other people walking and coming and stepping on saplings, or water coming and taking them away. The removal of fully matured trees also negatively affects the local biome. Grown trees provide shelter for many species away from predators on the ground, and also provide food sources for many species through its own growth, as well as the growth for many other organisms it harbors. When environmental factors removed, a biome can be drastically affected. One good example of the effects of this deforestation is the Amazon rainforest. The Amazon is being reduced by acres every day by both slash and burn and the clear cutting from logging companies. And the cattle grazing down there also removes young growth and doesn't allow the forest to come back. So it's very unsustainable and doesn't have a long-term solution. Many species, and both plants and animals, are being endangered and becoming extinct every year. One statistic estimates that 27,000 species are being lost each year, and that's by the Edward Institute. This estimate isn't exact, but even if it isn't, 27,000 is a lot of species to be losing every year, and that's just biodiversity being lost each year. We need one way to solve this problem is to create plots of trees to allow the loggers to restrict loggers to plots of trees, so that they won't tap into the habitats, and it'll just affect one area. This plot needs to be in an area that doesn't affect a certain species very drastically, and also the soil is very renewable, so it doesn't deteriorate right away from all the logging. Another solution would be to rotate different plots around, so that once you cut down one plot, you have another plot for the next year's economic sell of the logging. There are many other alternatives to the logging, and right now the sole purpose for clear cutting and slash and burn is because it's very economic, and it's more costly to do alternative methods, because they have to be responsible for the damage they cause. However, in the future, there will be less places for the logging companies to go, so they'll be eliminating more and more species each year, and that will be more costly in the long run than alternative methods now. And we must utilize the alternatives in order to sustain the earth for our future generations.
All right, Garrett, your claim needs to be an awful lot clearer. There's probably a factual issue in there somewhere, but it starts off sounding like a policy claim. It ends up sounding like a policy claim, and you need to focus a little bit more on ultimately what you're asking this audience to believe. Also, I think you need to define the nature of the controversy a little bit more, because at first I thought you were talking about American logging practices, and then it appears that you were talking primarily about practices that are occurring in South America. And if you're talking about both, then you should be able to specify with evidence which kinds of practices are having which kind of effect, and then we could understand a little bit more the differences between the risks that are involved. There's not really an organizational structure set up at the beginning of the speech. In your signposting in the body of the speech, once in a while I can hear a claim that's coming out, but I don't really get any relationship to the other points that are being presented. This sounds like a long essay as opposed to a speech, and I think that's a little bit problematic. Also, there's only one source citation that you give in the presentation. That's the one study that estimates the number of species that are being lost each year in the rainforests. Other than that, we're getting a lot of hypothetical examples. I don't hear any sources for even the description of the practices that are being used. I don't doubt that they are probably exactly as you described them, but you are asking us to take it on your say-so, and you have to do something to add to your credibility a little bit there. I think that your voice projects pretty well, but you do have a tendency to look down a bit, and I thought it was kind of distracting occasionally that you're playing with the key fob. That looks like a little bit of nervous energy that's coming out there. You want to control that. I thought that you explained the processes very nicely, but proving the impact was a little problematic, and that's really where the controversy is on this. Toward the end, you also develop a discussion of the economic issues that are going on here, and that's also one place where there's going to be some of the controversy, and I think that that was something that was a good thing to put into the speech, but it didn't get developed as well as it needed to be so that we could see what the argument was. Thank you.